So hello, and welcome to another um, teaching session. If that's what you want to call it, of posture for purpose, position for promise. I believe we are on lesson 8 or 9. I don't even remember, but it's been so good to me. If nobody else, it has been good to me. And I'm very excited about how this story, just comes to fruition and how it can be related to our daily lives. That's what has been really intriguing to me. And so let me start this slideshow. We are in scriptures, Genesis 48 to 49. And like I told you guys, we're going, my intention is to go to chapter 30, chapter 30. And then to just kind of do a recap, like a culmination of everything and a summary to just kind of round out the entire series. I really believe, if you're watching this later on YouTube, let me know how you've enjoyed the series and what some of your aha moments are in the YouTube comments, because I'm posting this on YouTube, but I do teach this live. So if you're, interested in getting with us and, listening to these live, you can definitely join the safe space. You can go to www.zmsafespace.com. So as I said, we're in chapters 48 and 49 today. And just as a recap, to bring up like where we are now, at this point, Joseph has revealed himself to his brothers. He has spoken with, his father. He has they've settled in Goshen. We talked about the purpose of the brothers as well, because a lot of times we don't hear about the purpose of the brothers. The brothers served as villains. They're often villains, right, in the story. So we don't usually hear from the brothers or what happened with the brothers. We just hear that they were villains that threw him in the pit. We just don't really talk about what purpose they served later. Um, you know, Joseph had to tell them, don't be upset with me. God allowed this. God set this up so that I could come to Egypt before you and in turn save the entire family. And let's be clear, there are some of us that are charged with a Joseph anointing, and that anointing is for us to do things that are bigger than us, that will save our families, that will bless our families as a whole. And somewhere in your life, God gives you that coat of many colors, and you're just kind of like, Lord, I don't understand why, I didn't ask for this calling. I know I've said it several times, like I didn't even ask for this. Sometimes you're hated for it, and you're trying to figure out, what did I do to you? I haven't done anything. They used to say I was my grandmother's favorite. But the whole time my grandmother knew that there was something in me that connected with her, and she just knew that this is the one that I want to raise up, that God wants to raise up, essentially, to do his work in the family. And so we can fight it, okay, and make our road harder, or we can accept it and allow our road to be a little easier, because as long as I fought it and tried to make excuses for it and tried to be accepted and all of that, things didn't work out, right? It didn't work out. There were some things that I was just never comfortable with doing. I tried to do it, but God would never let me be comfortable with doing it, because it would have ultimately wrecked his plan. And so I tried to fit in, didn't work. Tried to, be accepted by my family, and certainly didn't work. And so ultimately God was like, no, I created you to stand out. And I want to admonish you to not try to continue to fit in and be accepted by, when God is creating you to be consecrated for his purpose, and when he has created you to stand out, to be unique, and to make a difference. It can be a hard, lonely road sometimes. I will absolutely tell you that. Don't you think it was at some point hard and lonely for Joseph? I'm sure it was. Nobody was in that pit with him, but him. When he was in slavery on his way to Egypt, I'm sure he was like, what is going on? When he was in that prison, when he was at Potiphar's house and Potiphar's wife was harassing him, I'm sure he was like, look, now, there were some times, I'm sure, just in his human nature, he just kind of wanted to give up. Like, enough is enough. Um, But somewhere along the ride, somewhere along the way, God had to have spoken to him, because he learned, when he revealed himself to his brothers, one of the things he said was, God has done this. So God had to have spoken to him somewhere along the way. So the road to purpose, we started off with the place of preparation. We hit the pit. Then we went to the passage, which was Potiphar's house. And then after Potiphar's wife, accused him, and she lied, he ended up in prison. Excuse me. And then, after interpreting the dreams, of the two that were there, I think it was the cupbearer, that he told him not to forget about me, and he did, for 2 years. So Joseph was in prison for 2 extra years, until such time that Pharaoh had a dream and nobody could interpret it. So again, as I said in that teaching, let this be known that even when people forget about you, God will make them remember. Even when people forget about you, God will make them remember. He will make them remember. He will make people in rooms where your name is being said, remember you. Oh, there's a need. She has this talent. God will make people remember you when it is his will, when it is his way, when it is his purpose, when it is his plan. No matter what the plot, plan, and scheme of the enemy is, God will make your name be said. God will make your face be remembered in rooms that you've never put your feet in. Joseph had never put his feet in those rooms. But, I think it was that cupbearer that said, oh, man, I forgot about Joseph. But he can interpret your dream. And Pharaoh like, yeah, potato, go get him. Go get him, because at this point, somebody gonna have to tell me why I'm dreaming about these fat and skinny cows. You know what I'm saying? Somebody gonna have to tell me why what is the problem? And that's exactly what Joseph did. And when Joseph came and showed him that gift, what happened? That gift made room for him that he could have never, ever done himself. He was the second in command of the entire country. And that set the tone for what? For purpose to be established so that promise could happen. We have to understand this. And I know I'm going to make a separate video on this because it has been irking me. There are so many people, especially in this day and time, in this day and age, there are so many people who are bypassing God's process to try and manufacture God's promise so that they can have a platform. And this is why you will begin to see platforms crumbling that you thought were strong, because sometimes people start off very, quickly. They'll start off fast and, good. And it seems like they're right with the Lord. And they say, but look at durability. See, God sustains and maintains what he ordains. Okay. God sustains and maintains what he ordains. So when God calls for it, he is going to keep it until such time that you may move to the next thing. But one thing about God, he ain't fickle. That's one. And number two, God, you will know when it's God because of the consistency, first of all, in the thing that's representing him, and the heart of which the person is doing that thing. And then also you will know that it is God because of, even if that thing ends, how does it end? Right? How does it end? Because we don't just do things haphazardly in the Lord. And you'll also connect to that thing with the God in you. See, part of the reason why many of us are deceived, part of the reason why many of us are distracted, sometimes we're destroyed because we're following that person instead of the God in them. Don't follow me. Zakiya will fail you every single time. But follow the God in me. This is why I tell you to research things for yourself. Research it for yourself. Don't take my word for anything. See it for yourself. And that's because it is imperative that we know God for ourselves and we understand our journey for ourselves. Okay? So it's imperative that we know that. All right? All right, so let us move on into Genesis, the 48th chapter, and now we're finally at the promise. So, we went from the prison, they finally remembered Joseph, and then into the palace. And one of the highlights when Joseph went into the palace was he fixed himself up and got ready for the king. Ladies who are getting married, fix yourself up and be prepared for your king. Those who are looking for better jobs, fix yourself up and prepare to go before the king. Those of us who want things from the Lord, fix yourself up and go before the king. right? And so he fixed himself up and he went before the king and he interpreted the dream, and Pharaoh said, hey, I'm gonna need somebody like you on my team. Okay, now let me say this as a word of warning. When you have the Spirit of God in you, there are some people who will want to keep you close because of that Spirit of God, but they will want to pimp it. Be careful. Be careful of the people that want to keep you close because they're not willing to live right. And I'm not saying this about Pharaoh per se, but they don't want to live right. But what they want is to keep you close, because if I got you close, then I know God is with us. Hold on. Because see, every person is charged with having their own salvation, working out their own soul salvation with fear and trembling. You're supposed to study to show your own self approved, right? A workman that need not be ashamed, rightfully dividing the word of truth. You're supposed to do that for yourself. So there are times in which, like I said, I don't get all of the phone calls to come chill with everybody because they just don't want the Lord at the table. And they know I ain't leaving them. So if you invite me, then just know, I'm going to have a good time. I'm going to laugh. I'm going to joke and all of that, because God don't require us to be sticks in the mud per se. But your spirit will tell you when you're going too far. Your spirit will tell you if something is off, or if you're not supposed to be doing something, it will. It will absolutely tell you. I'll give you an example. Last night, we were celebrating my cousin's 40th birthday. And he's one of my favorites. And so I was like, I dare not miss it. I usually don't do a lot on Saturdays, because that's usually my Sabbath day. But I waited until about, 10 o'clock anyway to go to the party. And I just planned on just, showing my face, just showing my support, and being there. And I got on the dance floor with my cousins and we was laughing and joking and stuff or whatever. Nothing provocative or nothing out of order. But when it was time for them to do the toast, the Spirit said, don't you get no cup. Don't you get no cup of nothing. Because see, nobody knows what's in that cup. See, sometimes we got to understand that although we're not perfect, sometimes you will taint your own witness by some of the things that I do. And so the Spirit said, no, ma'am, don't you get a cup. And they kept saying, you don't want no water, no juice or nothing. Because don't nobody know what's in that juice. Don't nobody know what's in that water. And you never know the day that you have to speak into somebody's life. And they say, well, I remember you was at the party. I remember when you was, and sometimes people will do that. And so you have to be led by the Spirit in all that you do. Will we fall short? Yes, we will from time to time, because we are not human. We are human. We are not perfect. However, we should not use that as an excuse to be like, well, I ain't human. Well, God ain't done with me yet. Well, he know my heart. All that stuff that we say, not understanding that, hey, we don't use these things as an excuse to continue to exhaust his grace. Okay, so Joseph went before the king. He became the second in command in Egypt. His brothers came. We went through that. The promise was manifested after the purpose was established, right? And so let's talk a little bit more about the promise. All right, so Joseph at this point was told that his father was ill, so he went to see his father, but he took his two sons, Manasseh and Ephraim. Some say Ephraim, Ephraim. Manasseh means God has made me forget completely my hardship and my parental home, or some will just say forgetting. And Ephraim means God has made me fertile in the land of my affliction, or fruitful. So one means forgetting and the other one means fruitful. One means forgetting, in other words, what was behind, and the other one means fruitful in moving forward. I'm saying this for a reason, so keep that tucked in your memory bank. Now, and I also want to point out the fact that before, the first things first was he had to forget. Joseph had to forget. He had to forgive. He had to forget what hardships he had endured in order to be fruitful, because oftentimes if we continue to harbor on what happened, we often say that we can forgive but not forget, not understanding that first and foremost, when we decide to remember, because we say, well, I ain't gonna forget, and to some degree we shouldn't forget, because some things we cannot afford to have happen again. However, how are you remembering? How are you remembering what happened to you? How are you remembering the road? How are you remembering the things that occurred? How? Are you remembering it responsibly, or are you rehearsing? Right? We have to remember to, we have to learn to remember responsibly. And some things we do need to forget, unless they're in danger of being repeated, and they're too dangerous to be repeated. But other than that, some things we just do well to let it go. Let it go. If God forgets our sins, he's I remember it no more. Why do we think we have to keep everything in our memory bank that ever happened to us in the world? We don't. Again, to me, we only need to remember the things that are too dangerous to be repeated, and they may be in danger of being repeated. But how we remember those things, we have to do it responsibly. We cannot remember things that hurt us and keep rehearsing them, because otherwise we won't be fruitful. You'll bear rotten fruit. Rotten roots equal rotten fruit. Those things will make you bitter. They'll make you bitter. You'll be frustrated. You'll be irritated. You'll be this or that. And how can you get a word through from God? How can you be over people? Do you understand that there are some people that have platforms that have amazing gifts, amazing talents, but they are so bitter and because they didn't allow God to take them through their process with him and skip straight to the promise? Can you just imagine if Joseph had skipped straight to the promise right after the pit? He had not gone through anything. He went straight from the pit to the promise like we hear. Oh, no, it wouldn't have been good. It wouldn't have been good. And so we have to remember responsibly. And then some things we have to just forget. Okay? We have to just forget. Jacob told Joseph about what God had promised him when he was in Beersheba. Remember, Beersheba was a place where God was known for meeting people. Right? So Jacob was smart enough to know, you know what? Let me go hear what God has to say about that, about, this thing, about me getting up, moving to Egypt. What does God have to say? Is this really my son? What does God have to say? Because I really don't want to move until God says move. And we need to adopt that same mindset that I really don't want to move until God says move. What does God have to say about this? I don't care what nobody else is saying, because I need to know, what is God saying? What is God saying about this? Right? Because I don't care, you're a good fit for this and you're a good fit for that, and we get hung up on what people say, even what our pastors say. Your pastor is not your God. He may speak, he may be a conduit, he may be, God may speak through him from time to time, but your pastor is still a man, full of flesh, full of blood. He is a man. And so ultimately, I don't care if my pastor says it. I don't care if my parents say it. I don't care if my people say it. I don't care who says it. I need to know, God, what are you saying? And that's what Jacob did. Jacob said, God, what are you saying? And let me go to the place where I know that you are. See, many of us are sitting in some places and God been gone, if he was ever there. Check your location. God, I need your location. Like your kids be wanting your location nowadays. God, I need your location, because I need to know where you at, because I need you to be where I'm at, and I need to be where you are. So, hey, at the end of the day, I need to check your location, Lord. Okay? So Jacob told Joseph that when he was in Beersheba, God told him, I am going to make you fruitful and increase your number. I will make you a community of people, and I will give this land an everlasting possession to your descendants after you. I'm reading from like the NIV or Amplified, I think it is. Now then, your two sons born to you in Egypt, before I came to you here, will be reckoned as mine, Ephraim and Manasseh. Notice he put Ephraim first. Just as Reuben and Simeon are mine. So he said, just like your brothers are mine, they're going to be mine too. And then he told Joseph, any children born to you after them will be yours. In the territory they inherit, they will be reckoned under the names of their brothers. They will be under the names of their brothers. So I don't care if you go have a batch of babies after this, they will not be mine. They will be covered under Ephraim and Manasseh. So why would he adopt Joseph's children? Why would he adopt them? Well, first of all, he adopted them so that the blessing could be upon them. Because back in that time, you didn't bless your grandkids. They had to be your heirs, your children. And the way that he could bless them was if they were his children. Now, some people say that he adopted them because there was a significance in the number 12. The tribes of Judah. So there was a significance in not tribes of Judah, Israel. And so there was a significance in the number of 12. I don't know that. I've not researched that. I'm not a Bible scholar. I can go off of what God gives me. But I know for a fact he adopted them so that he could bless them. Okay. Now, although Manasseh was the oldest, peep this, and was sitting so that his right hand would be on him, because it was customary in that time that the oldest had to be under the right hand to get the best blessing. So Joseph positioned his sons where Manasseh would be at the right hand of his father and Ephraim would be at the left hand of his father. But let me tell you what Jacob did. Jacob crossed his arms and he gave Ephraim the better blessing, even though Manasseh was the oldest. And Joseph was vexed. Joseph's like, what you doing? Whoa, 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 whoa. What you doing? He the oldest. So he tried to move him. And Jacob said, no, 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 no. No, 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 no. See, God had already shown Jacob that Ephraim would be more prominent. So he would need the bigger blessing. See, we are jealous of some people, right? We are jealous of some people that we just feel like God's anointing is on them. God's blessing is on them. God's favor is on them. But don't you understand that to whom much is given, much is required? Do you understand that these people don't have it easy? Do you understand the level of spiritual warfare that they have to go through just to complete the task? Jacob knew that Ephraim was going to need a bigger blessing for his calling, for his gift, and for his purpose. So sometimes while you jealous, you got to stop and ask yourself, wait a minute, am I willing to do? And am I willing to sacrifice? Am I willing to give up? Am I willing to turn away from the things that this person has turned away from, sacrificing, giving up in order to have what they have from the Lord? Because I assure you that your answer, if you knew the full story, would probably be no. Because we don't want to give up nothing, no way. That's just our sinful nature, our selfish nature. So until we come into the nature of God, we don't want to give up nothing. We want the short route. We want the easy way. We want the less friction. We want the road that's more travel, so we ain't got to be the path, layers. So we ain't got to be the trailblazers. We want the easy route. Especially in this society, everything is a microwave society. I want it now. I want it soon. I want it hot. I want it fast. I want it all. And that's just how it goes. Then anytime we got to toil for something, wait for something, we like, We immediately tell, it's the devil. It's the devil. It's the enemy. Anytime something hard, it's the enemy. Okay? So Ephraim ended up with the better blessing. So Jacob told Joseph that Rachel, his mother, had passed away on the way there. All right? And she was buried in a certain area, I think in Canaan, because I don't believe they had totally left Canaan at the time. They were not totally out of Canaan, I should say, at the time. So she was buried in Canaan, in like this area wherever they were at the time that she passed away. And then Jacob told Joseph that he was getting ready to die, but Jacob told Joseph that God would be with him and God would take him back to the land of his fathers. Okay. Then Jacob gave him one more ridge of land than his brothers. He promised him one more ridge of land. And it was the ridge that he had taken from the Amorites with the sword and the bow. And here's the thing. It was amazing to me how from start to finish, okay, he favored Jacob and Joseph and never made it a secret. It was never a secret because here he is giving him an extra ridge of land. Then after he talked to Joseph and told him what was going on, then he sent for the rest of his sons so that he could pronounce their future. Now, I want to put a little pause here. And this is not specifically about Israel, aka Jacob, but it kind of is. Be careful when you allow somebody to pronounce your future, especially when they have settled for you, shown a disdain for you your whole life, or have treated you in an inferior way. Because listen to me. I know that in those times and in that culture, that was what it was customary for the parent to do, especially the father, because, father to the sons, he's leaving things as his legacy, his inheritance, I get it. But after the way Jacob had treated his sons, and the things they had gone through. First of all, and we're going to go through the things that he told his sons quickly, and then we're going to come back and kind of take a little bit of a deep dive in that next week, Lord's will. But let me tell you something. I know it was customary back then, but some of these didn't seem like a blessing. Okay, first of all. Second of all, look here. I don't care who you are. Titles do not mean entitlement. Now, that's in this day and time. I know in that day and time it was different. I get it. I got it. But in this day and time that we're living in, I don't care if it's your mama. I don't care if it's your daddy. I don't care if it's your pastor. I don't care who it is. We do not have to accept somebody who don't care for us pronouncing our future, because God already did it. God already pronounced our future in his word. All we got to do is align with it. So when your husband or your ex-husband, or when your whoever, your old friends, when your pastor or whoever want to tell you, you ain't going to be this, you ain't going to get this, you ain't going to get that, that's pronouncing the future. And guess what? You don't get to tell me that. You got to come out of alignment with that. You got to cast that down, because the Bible said cast down every thought and imagination that exalts itself above the word of God. If God said I can, then who are you to say that I can't? Who are you to say that I can't? So be careful when you allow someone the power to pronounce in your life. Everybody should not have the power to pronounce in or over your life. Especially when they have settled for you, especially when they've shown a disdain for you, especially when they've treated you in an inferior way your whole life. I wish I would suck from that cup. I wish I would eat from that plate. I wish I would stand in that line. So let's go through these really quickly. And then, like I said, we'll come back and we'll kind of delve into these a little more, and then we'll wrap up this series. Lord will, this has been an amazing series. Okay, so let's start it with Reuben. He told Reuben that he was strong and vigorous, and he carried the might of Jacob, right? So he told him that he carried his might. You know, he was a very mighty man. And we know that because Reuben was mighty when it came to them putting him in that pit. Y'all not finna kill him. You know, he was strong and vigorous, and he carried the might of his father, but his father said that he was unstable, reckless, and boiling with sinful lust. Okay. And then he told him, you shall not excel. He told him he would not excel or have the preeminence of the firstborn, because he went to bed with Bilhah, which was his father's handmaiden wife, you know. When it came to Simeon and Levi, he told them, y'all equally headstrong, deceitful, vindictive, and cruel with swords that are weapons of violence and revenge. Cursed be their anger, for it was fierce, and their wrath, for it was cruel. I will divide and disperse them in Jacob, and scatter them in the midst of the land of Israel. That don't sound like a blessing. Okay. Then it came Judah. Judah, he said, the one whom your brothers praise or shall praise. Your hand will be on the neck of your enemies. Your father's son shall bow down to you. Okay, that was a blessing. Zebulun. Zebulun shall dwell at the seashore, and he shall be a haven or a landing place for ships, and his flank shall be towards Sidon. We'll dig more into that next week. Issachar. Issachar is like a strong-boned donkey, crouching down between the sheepfolds. When he saw that the resting place was good and that the land was pleasant, he bowed his shoulder to bear burdens and became a servant at forced labor. That don't sound like a blessing either. Like, I'm a donkey, so I'm just going to have to work hard my whole life? Okay. Dan, it said, Dan shall judge his people as one of the tribes of Israel. Dan shall be a venomous serpent in the way, a fanged snake in the path that bites the horse's heels, so that his riders falls backwards. I wait for your salvation, O Lord. That don't sound good neither. Gad, as for Gad, a raiding troop shall raid him, but he shall raid at their heels and assault them victoriously. So he gonna have to fight. Okay. Asher, some say Asher, some say Asher. Asher's food supply shall be rich and bountiful, and he shall yield and deliver royal delights. That sounds like a blessing. Naphtali is a doe let loose, a swift warrior, which yields branched antlers or eloquent words. So he's going to speak well. Okay. And then we get to Joseph, and listen to how much he said about him. Joseph is a fruitful bough, a main branch of the vine, a fruitful bough by a spring. Its branches run over the wall. The skilled archers have bitterly attacked and provoked him. They have shot at him and harassed him, but his bow remained firm and steady. For his arms were made strong and agile by the hands of the mighty one of Jacob. By the God of your father who will help you, and by the Almighty who blesses you with blessings of the heavens above, blessings lying in the deep and couches beneath, blessings of the breast, and of the fertile womb. The blessings of your father are greater than the blessings of my ancestors, Abraham and Isaac. They shall be on the head of Joseph, even on the crown of the head of him who was the distinguished one and the one who is prince among his brothers. Sound to me like Joseph was the firstborn. Ain't that what it sounds like to you? Because in his mind, Joseph was. Then he got to Benjamin. Benjamin is a ravenous wolf. In the morning, he devours the prey, and at night, he divides the spoils. He gave the blessing to Joseph. He gave the blessing to Joseph, and as if the way he had treated Joseph in life wasn't enough for the brothers. As he prepared to die, he takes Joseph's grandchildren that he didn't even know, because the Bible said that when he raised up them grandkids, the two grandsons, so when at the top of this teaching, I told you that Joseph took two sons with him, his two sons with him, Manasseh and Ephraim. Well, when he took the two sons with him, when he raised up one of the sons, Jacob said, "Who is that?" So you made these two grandsons that you don't even know, because see, remember, they wasn't raised with him. He had them in Egypt. Joseph didn't have no kids when he was in that pit. Joseph didn't have no kids when he was in that prison. Joseph didn't have no kids when he was in that palace until time had progressed. So he didn't even know them kids. So you mean to tell me, Jacob, that on your deathbed, you take two of his kids when our kids were raised around you? Because remember, Jacob took 70 descendants with him from Canaan to Egypt. So you mean to tell me that my kids that went got you some water, that went got you this, and went did this for you, and tended to the sheep, and tended to the livestock, and all of that, our kids couldn't get no blessing, but you will go get the two kids you didn't know because they came from Joseph that you love so much, and you would take those two and put them on the level of your children so that you can bless them? What an insult. And I'm sure Jacob didn't see nothing wrong with it, because that was what was in his heart to do. It was in his heart to bless Joseph. That was his firstborn in his eyes, because he never wanted those other kids, and he never wanted their mama. This is why it is imperative that we do not allow people to settle for us. Be it intimate relationships, friendships, jobs. You ain't got to settle for me, baby, because if somebody settles for you, hear me clearly, they will never ever desire to treat you well, because you're not what they wanted. I applied for a job in a department one time. It was human resources, and I have a master's degree and years of experience in human resources. I applied for the job, and my job said that I did not qualify for the position, even though I qualified on paper, off paper, like period. My coworker asked me, she said, "Are you going to contest it?" I said, "No, ma'am." She said, "Why?" I said, "Listen, if I got to fight that hard for you to give me a position, I don't want you settling for me." I said, "All money ain't good money. And some folks will fight, make a person accept them, only to spend all the extra raise money on medicine. Because now you got a headache, you're stressed out, you toe up, and all of that. You got to fight from somebody always trying to get rid of you because they never wanted you. So in this instance, it's like, wow, you bring the two grandchildren up to our level to bless them at our level, but never mind our children. We got to understand how that feels to others. And then it said that he blessed each according to the blessing he thought was appropriate. Okay. Then he told them where to bury him. And then he took his last breath. Now, when he told them where to bury him, I want to point out something that's very interesting. Because God have a way of doing things. Okay. Leah was buried. If my memory serves me correctly, Leah was buried in the same vicinity where all of the ancestors, were buried. And that's where he wanted to be buried. He wanted to be laid with his ancestors. And that's where Leah was buried also. But guess what? He ended up being buried with Leah and not Rachel. So even in burial, you ain't finna have her. In burial, I'm gonna make you lay with the one that you ain't want. even in death, she gonna be right there with you. I ain't finna let you be with the one that you love so much. Nope. You gonna be buried over here, and she gonna be buried over there. We have to be careful how we treat people that we don't want, that can't benefit us, that don't have nothing for us. We have to be careful because God is still searching us. As a matter of fact, he's searching us probably even more to see how we handle those that we're not favorable of or that we don't care for. He's watching us closely to see how we treat the person that can't do nothing for us. How do we treat that homeless person? How do we treat or look down on people or look up to people even? How? When you look up to somebody, are they taking the place of God? When you look down on somebody, are you casting them away? God is paying more attention to that type of stuff than he is to people, how you treat the people that you love. Because it's easy to treat them well. It's easy to treat the person that you love well. But what about the person that you feel disdain for? What about the person that you cannot stand? What about the person that has treated you wrong? How do you treat them? God is saying, I want to see if my glory is truly upon you. I want to see if my spirit is truly within you. I want to see how you treat them. Are you wearing my name properly? Or do God need a DNA test? Because you keep telling people that's your father, and baby, Maury, like, you are not the father, God. Because look at how they act. You will know a man by his fruit, be it rotten or not. Now, I added that last part. That was not the Lord. But I'm just saying, whether the fruit is rotten or whether the fruit is good, you will know a man by his fruit. And so we will know if you are God's child by you just can't have perpetually rotten fruit and be talking about the Lord. Yesterday, I was talking to my family and I told them one of the biggest problems in the community of Christianity or anywhere is that people are out here quoting the word that they will not live, won't even attempt to live it. But then all of a sudden you want to quote it. Why are you quoting something that you ain't even attempting to live? Some stuff only works when you are in good standing with God. The prayer of the righteous availeth much. Hello. We don't want to admit that. We don't want to, we all equal in the Lord's eyesight. No, we're not. We equal in his love. We equal in terms of his children. We all his children. But we are not equal in terms of prayer and communication and all of that. No, we're not. He said the prayer of the righteous. He said the righteous, the seed of the righteous. He has some instructions for them. He makes it very plain in his word that if you do this, then you get this. If you don't get this, then you do this, you don't get that. But we don't want to admit that. Because then we have to admit that maybe we're not in right standing with him. And that might be why we're not getting the things that we desire from the Lord. Okay. So we'll come back, Lord's will, next week, and we will delve into some of these things and why he said some of these things to them, right? Because there are some parts that we don't know. Like, you know, we didn't really hear about Issachar, and we didn't hear about Dan and Gad and Asher, whatever you want to call them. We didn't really hear about Naphtali. All we heard about was, you know, Judah. We heard about, you know, Simeon was in jail. Levi, we heard about Reuben, you know, but we didn't hear about everybody. So we're going to delve into, I'm going to do a little bit more research, and we're going to delve more into why he said some of the things that he said. But this is what I want to wrap up with. As parents, we have to be careful, because some of the things that Jacob pronounced about his sons came from him, came from his deceitful nature, but he tried to charge them as if he didn't pass that to them. Sometimes we have to be honest about some of the things that we pass to our children. See, can't nobody beat us with a stick and tell us that we, you know, beat us down with the stick when we proud with that child and our chest stuck out when they graduating and when they showing good qualities. But what about when they showing less than, you know, stellar qualities? Oh, they can't find us then. Not a peep. Where they get that from? You know, if you curse before your children all the time and now they cuss like a sailor, you want to whoop them. Why? Somebody got to whoop you first because they learned that from you. Some of us don't want to be responsible for some of the things that we see coming back to us because we don't want to believe that this is actually a mirror, that they're showing us the part of us that we really don't want to see. And so it bothered me to see that Jacob pronounced these things over Reuben, pronounced these things over Levi and Simeon, not realizing, hey, sir, they got it from you. And now you want to bless Joseph because Joseph was stellar in going through his trials? Could it be that he was stellar in going through his trials because you had girded him up and you had pampered him so well and it was just God's will, maybe? Didn't necessarily mean that it wasn't God's will to bless the other ones, but you sure ain't put no blessing up on them. You sure ain't help them. So as parents, we have to be careful that we don't grasp our children and be gloating and happy when they're doing great, but then when they're not doing great or when they're not, you know, when they disrespectful, we don't want to. I don't know where they get that from. But look at you, look at your relationships, look at you. How do you handle things? Look at you. How do you handle conflict? I see people on Facebook all the time, get on Facebook, cuss each other out, all of that. Then when their kids do it, y'all stop. What? They watch you. And gone are the days of do as I say and not as I do, because the kids now are like, nope, you did it. And they holding us accountable as parents. And that's why many of them are gone away from the Lord, are gone away from what we've called right, because they've watched you be hypocritical. They've watched you hide your sins or attempt to hide them. They've watched you and they said, I don't want no parts of that God. I don't want no parts of that God. One thing about me, I'm transparent before my kids. Look here. You know, mama don't always get it right. But that does not mean that God has not given me the wisdom to lead and guide you. But what you ain't finna see is me keep falling down over the same stuff. You know what I'm saying? But I'm not finna tear down other people because they not perfect, and I'm not finna appear to be perfect either, because I don't want to misrepresent God in a way where it will turn you off so badly that it will cause you to turn away from God. No. I don't need that blood on my hands. So we have to be careful that when our children get out here cutting up, that we don't say, I raised them better than that. Did you really? Because sometimes we did, but sometimes we infuse some parts of us in them that we didn't like, and now it's coming back to us, and we don't like it, but we don't want to claim it. Okay, like Jacob. And we'll favor others that show the good parts of us as opposed to the ones that show the bad parts of us. And that's not right. All right, so I'm going to stop the recording now.